The derelict registered on Kale's sensors as pre-collapse era, which meant it was either completely worthless or valuable enough to save his life. Given that his salvage ship was currently running on emergency power and held together by optimism, he was hoping for the latter. The ship hung in the dark between stars, no power signature, no heat bloom, just the faint electromagnetic whisper that said something inside still technically functioned. Dead enough that no one had bothered claiming it, alive enough that Kale's failing sensors could detect it. Boarding through the emergency, airlock took the last of his suit's reserve oxygen. The interior was cold, not void cold, but the kind of cold that said environmental systems had been slowly failing for months or years. His suit lights cut through darkness, revealing corridors that were eerily intact. No signs of battle damage or explosive decompression, just the pristine abandonment of a ship whose crew had either left carefully or never existed. Kale had been awake for 36 hours, running from a salvage job gone bad, and the people who decided his share of the profits wasn't necessary. His ship was dying, his supplies were critically low, and he needed to find something valuable on this derelict before exhaustion or oxygen depletion made the decision for him. The crew quarters were in the ship's central section, untouched and almost comfortable if you ignored the cold. Kale told himself he'd just rest for an hour, get his head clear, then properly search the ship. He curled up in the least uncomfortable corner, sealed his suit to conserve warmth, and let exhaustion take him. He woke to warmth, not the ship's environmental systems. His suit sensors confirmed those were still barely functional, but body heat. Human body heat, or close enough that his confused mind registered it as such. Someone was pressed against him, and his first thought was that he wasn't alone on this derelict. His second thought, when he opened his eyes, was that he was hallucinating from oxygen deprivation. She was clearly not human. The basic structure was right, bilateral symmetry, humanoid proportions, but her skin had an opalescent sheen that shifted colors with her breathing, and her features were almost but not quite right in ways that made his pattern recognition scream warnings. Most distinctly, she had neural interface ports along her temples and the base of her skull, the kind from the old empires that let people connect directly to ship systems. She was unconscious or in some kind of stasis, breathing slowly, her body temperature abnormally low but rising where she pressed against him. When Kale tried to move away, alarms screamed through the ship, sudden and deafening after the silence. A voice, artificial and edged with desperation. Do not separate. Separation will trigger cascade failure in Empress Shalika's biological systems. Probability of survival, 0.03%. Your survival probability following her system failure, 0.08%. Kale froze. What the hell is happening? Emergency, neural integration protocols active. You are currently serving as biological stabilization system for Empress Shalika of the Velthoran Ascendancy. Please remain calm and maintain physical contact while I explain your situation. My situation. Kale's voice cracked. I fell asleep on a derelict and woke up entangled with an alien, with an empress. And you're telling me I can't move. Correct, though this vessel is not a derelict. It is the imperial yacht Severance, currently in emergency fugue mode following catastrophic stasis failure. The AI explained with clinical precision. Empress Shalika had been fleeing a dynastic purge for 3 months, kept alive in cryogenic stasis, while her ship navigated toward safe haven. The stasis pod had suffered cascade failure approximately 6 hours ago. The ship's AI, faced with the Empress's imminent death and no viable alternatives, detected Kale's life signs and made a desperate gamble. Initiate neural integration protocols designed for imperial bodyguards, using the nearest viable heat source to stabilize the Empress's failing biological systems. You turned me into a life support system. You presented as the only option within acceptable probability parameters for preserving Empress Shalika's life. The neural integration is necessary to coordinate your biological systems with hers. You are currently sharing certain autonomic functions. Kale felt something then, a sensation that wasn't his own. Calm resignation mixed with bone-deep exhaustion, emotions that didn't match his current panic. I'm feeling her emotions. Correct. Neural integration includes limited empathic linkage. You may also experience memory fragments as the connection stabilizes. How do I disconnect? Minimum integration time for basic neural protocol stabilization: 72 hours. Full separation requires medical facilities neither this vessel nor your salvage ship possesses. Premature separation will result in fatal neural cascade for Empress Shalika and severe cognitive damage for you. Kale closed his eyes and tried to process. 3 days. He was stuck for 3 days, physically entangled with an unconscious alien empress whose emotions he could feel and whose memories were going to bleed into his mind. There is one additional complication, the AI said, and Kale laughed because of course there was. The emergency protocols required activation of the distress beacon. Anyone scanning this region will now know Empress Shalika's location. Her enemies are likely en route. How long? Estimated arrival of hostile forces: 63 hours, assuming they were monitoring for beacon activation. 3 days to separation. 63 hours until people who wanted the Empress dead would arrive. And Kale was physically bound to her, experiencing her emotions with no way to escape. "This is the worst salvage job of my life," he muttered. "Your cooperation is appreciated," the AI replied, missing the sarcasm entirely. Kale looked down at Shalika, this stranger whose warmth kept them both alive, whose enemies were coming, whose mind was starting to bleed into his. Her eyes moved beneath closed lids, dreaming or experiencing whatever passed for consciousness during neural integration. He was so completely screwed. The integration deepened as hours passed. Kale experienced it as a gradual invasion, foreign thoughts and sensations bleeding into his consciousness like ink in water. He'd see something in the ship's corridors and suddenly know its purpose without being told. He'd think in his own language and find words from hers mixing in, concepts that didn't translate cleanly but somehow made sense anyway. The memories were worse. They came in fragments, intense and disorienting, carrying emotional weight that didn't belong to him. Standing before thousands, feeling the weight of their expectations like physical pressure. The isolation of absolute power, surrounded by people who saw function rather than person. The slow realization that trusted advisors were planning destruction. Grief for a civilization failing despite every attempt to save it. Loneliness so profound it made Kale's own isolation look comfortable by comparison. He tried to maintain distance, to remember these weren't his memories, but the neural link didn't care about his preference for boundaries. Shalika woke periodically, never fully conscious but aware enough to register his presence. The first time, she spoke in a language Kale shouldn't understand but did, courtesy of the neural link. "Who? Where? You're safe, your ship found me. This wasn't my choice either." She processed this with visible effort, her eyes focusing on him with difficulty. "I'm sorry, this is violation. You didn't consent. Neither did you, according to your AI. My AI makes desperate decisions like me." Her eyes closed again. "Warm, you're warm." She drifted back into unconsciousness, and Kale felt her relief through the link. Relief at not being alone, even if the company came from circumstance rather than choice. The physical reality of their situation became impossible to ignore. They were entangled because separation triggered alarms, sharing a space barely large enough for one person, experiencing each other's thoughts without consent. It should have been purely violating. It was violating. But there was also something uncomfortably intimate about sharing space and sensation with someone who understood loneliness at a fundamental level. The AI provided regular updates. Hostile forces have confirmed beacon location. Estimated arrival, 43 hours. Your physiology has adapted well to neural integration protocols. Empress Shalika's cognitive function shows improvement. Current survival probability, 37%. Those are terrible odds. They represent a significant improvement from 0.03%. Kale explored the ship during the periods when Shalika slept deeply enough that he could move a few meters without triggering alarms. The yacht was sophisticated, built for someone who needed both luxury and the ability to disappear. Its weapons systems were damaged, its FTL drive offline, but the core systems remained functional. He found evidence of the purge in the ship's logs, coordinated attacks across 3 sectors, elimination of the imperial dynasty, collapse of the government Shalika had ruled. She'd escaped with minutes to spare, poisoned by something slow-acting and insidious that her enemies had introduced months earlier, timed to activate during the coup. The stasis pod was supposed to keep her alive until she reached safe haven. It had failed. The AI had used Kale as an emergency biological bypass, turning him into a living life support system, because the alternative was letting her die alone in the dark. When Shalika woke again, more coherent this time, Kale asked, "Why were they so thorough, killing every member of your dynasty, hunting you across 3 sectors?" She was quiet for a moment, sharing his space in the dim emergency lighting. "Because I tried to change things. The ascendancy was built on exploitation, resources extracted from colony worlds, labor conditions that amounted to slavery, wealth concentrated in a system that made reform impossible. I attempted redistribution. I used my authority to protect people who never knew my name." Through the neural link, Kale felt the truth of it. Genuine intention to govern fairly in a system designed for exploitation, rage at her own inadequacy, grief for failing to save a civilization from itself. "Your enemies killed everyone," he said quietly, "to prevent anyone from continuing what I started, to make it clear that reform dies with reformers." She met his eyes. "You've seen my memories now. You know what I am. An empress who failed her people and ran rather than dying with them. You were poisoned and fleeing people trying to kill you. That's not exactly running, isn't it?" "No. Running would have been leaving before trying to change anything. You tried. It didn't work. Sometimes that's just how things go." She was silent, and through the link he felt something like gratitude mixed with surprise that he didn't judge her more harshly than she judged herself. "Your enemies are coming," he said. 43 hours. Your AI says this ship's weapons are damaged and my ship doesn't have enough power to jump to FTL. We're trapped." Through the neural link, Kale felt her focus sharpen. "There's a weapons cache. Imperial resources hidden across the sector, quantum-encrypted, accessible only to my neural signature. If we can reach one. We can't separate yet." "No, but the neural link." She hesitated. "You could access my systems through our connection. It would be a deeper violation than what's already happened. I would feel you in my mind more completely than I already do, but it might give us options." "You're asking me to invade your mind." "I'm asking you to help us survive." Kale looked at her, this stranger whose warmth kept them both alive, whose memories he already carried, whose enemies were coming. "If I do this, I'll see everything. Every memory, every thought, every private moment you've kept locked away." "I know. That doesn't seem like something I should agree to." "No, but death seems worse." Kale made the decision, knowing it was wrong but necessary. He would use the neural link to access Shalika's encrypted systems, diving deeper into her mind than the passive integration had already taken him. It was violation with consent, which didn't make it less invasive, but at least made it collaborative. "Tell me how to do this," he said. Shalika walked him through the process. Meditation techniques developed over centuries by neural-augmented soldiers, ways to navigate someone else's memories without losing yourself in them. It was supposed to take months to learn. They had hours. He dove in. Her memories hit him like drowning in someone else's life. Not fragments now, but complete experiences. childhood in the imperial palace feeling simultaneously suffocated and isolated, the weight of authority settling on her shoulders, too young, desperate attempts to use power for good within systems designed to concentrate it elsewhere. He felt her loneliness, the isolation of being surrounded by people who saw function rather than person, the knowledge that every relationship was transactional because you couldn't separate yourself from your position. He saw the coup developing, trusted advisors meeting in secret, decisions being made to eliminate the empress who'd become inconveniently idealistic, poison introduced to her food 3 months before the purge began. She'd suspected betrayal but not the scope. By the time she understood, it was too late to stop it. He experienced her escape, running through palace corridors while guards who'd sworn to protect her tried to kill her, reaching the yacht with minutes to spare, activating stasis knowing she was already poisoned, gambling on reaching safety before the slow-acting toxin could finish what her enemies had started. And underneath all of it, the desperate hope that someone, somewhere might continue what she'd begun. That reform wasn't impossible, just incomplete. The weapon's cache coordinates were buried deep, encrypted with layers of security that required navigating her most protected memories. Kale saw things she'd never shared. The private grief of realizing she'd failed, the anger at a system that punished compassion, the exhaustion of trying to be better than the empire she'd inherited. He felt her experiencing his memories in return through the link. His life as a salvager, the pragmatic amorality of survival in the outer reach, the reasons he'd ended up here running from a past that involved choosing profitable betrayal over loyalty, the shame he carried for being someone who'd prioritized survival over principle. They were strangers being forced into complete intimacy, seeing each other's worst moments and most private shame without the usual defenses. The weapon's cache coordinates unlocked. Kale surfaced from the neural dive feeling disoriented and nauseated, his sense of self temporarily scrambled by experiencing someone else's life so completely. Shalika was fully conscious now, feeling everything he'd just done, every memory he'd witnessed, every private moment he'd inadvertently invaded. "I'm sorry," he managed. "I know. I felt your guilt while you were doing it." She was shaking slightly. "I also felt your determination to save us both, even though you'd have every reason to just let me die and take your chances with escape. Your AI said separation would probably kill me too. Not exactly altruism. No, but you could have tried anyway. You chose this." Through the neural link, he felt her rage and gratitude mixing into something complicated. "I should execute you for what you just did to my mind." Probably, yeah. They were still physically entangled, neural interfaces still connected, unable to separate for another 34 hours, sharing emotional states that neither could hide. Her anger, his guilt, and underneath both, something neither wanted to acknowledge, relief at not being alone, even if the company came from desperate circumstance rather than choice. "The cache is 3 light towers away," Shalika said. "We can reach it if we leave now. But we'll need to coordinate perfectly. My knowledge of imperial weapon systems, your experience with salvage ship operations, and the neural link connecting them. Your enemies will arrive in 37 hours. If we can access the cache, we have options for defense and escape." The yacht's engines came online, powered by reserves the AI had been conserving. They navigated together, Kale handling piloting while Shalika accessed imperial systems through their shared neural connection. It should have been impossible. Their minds were too different, their knowledge bases incompatible, but the neural link created unprecedented coordination. They reached the weapons cache, a small orbital station that looked abandoned but open to Shalika's neural signature. Inside, defense systems, tactical weapons, and resources meant for imperial emergencies. She armed the yacht with equipment designed for military operations, transforming it from fugitive transport to something genuinely dangerous. "Your enemies will detect the cache access," the AI noted. "Estimated arrival time reduced to 14 hours. Then we prepare, Shalika said. They spent those hours building defenses, coordinating through the neural link, experiencing each other's tactical thinking in real time. Kale learned imperial military strategy. Shalika learned the improvisational chaos of salvager combat. They were strangers becoming something like partners, bound by necessity and involuntary intimacy. The enemies arrived. 3 warships, heavily armed, crewed by people who decided killing, an empress was more profitable than loyalty. The battle should have been impossible, 1 yacht against 3 warships, but the neural link created coordination no normal crew could match. They fought together, minds connected, each knowing what the other would do before they did it. It was effective and terrifying and uncomfortably intimate, experiencing someone else's combat decisions at the exact moment they made them. They won. Barely. The yacht was damaged, shields failing, weapons depleted, but the 3 warships were destroyed or fleeing. In the silence after battle, still entangled, Shalika asked, "The neural link can be safely terminated now. Your biological systems have stabilized, and the immediate threat is gone. We could separate." "We could," Kale agreed. "They didn't move." "The warmth between us," Shalika said carefully, "the connection. Is it merely biochemistry and forced neural integration?" Kale thought about it, about how much of what he felt was circumstance and how much was genuine connection forged through involuntary intimacy. "I don't know. Does it matter?" "It matters if I'm about to ask you to stay connected willingly." "Why would you do that?" "Because the neural link made us effective. My enemies are many and I have no allies left. You know my secrets now. You've seen my memories. You understand what I'm fighting for. And you've seen mine," Kale said. "You know what I am, a salvager who came here looking for things to steal, not exactly imperial bodyguard material." "No, but you're someone who chose to save me despite having every reason to let me die. That's better than most people I've called allies." They negotiated in the damaged cockpit of the yacht, still physically close but preparing for separation. Not a romantic arrangement. They barely knew each other beyond forced intimacy, but a partnership built on desperate pragmatism and the strange trust that comes from having your mind invaded and choosing not to hate the invader. Shalika offered what remained of her resources: access to the weapons cache network, coordinates to safe havens, knowledge of imperial systems, and a purpose beyond mere survival. Kale offered his ship, his skills, his knowledge of the outer reach, and the anonymity of being someone no one was looking for. They separated the neural link. The protocols terminated cleanly, and suddenly Kale was alone in his own head for the first time in days. The absence felt like losing a sense, like going partially blind after experiencing expanded perception. They looked at each other across the small distance that was now possible, no longer connected but not separated by much. "This is possibly the worst decision I've ever made," Kale said, "and I've made some truly terrible decisions." "Agreed," Shalika replied. "But perhaps survival requires occasionally making choices that look insane from the outside." They left the battle site behind, heading toward the first coordinates in Shalika's network of hidden resources. 2 strangers bound by involuntary intimacy, choosing to build something deliberate from the invasion neither had wanted. 3 weeks later, they'd fallen into a working rhythm. Kale handled piloting and technical operations. Shalika managed imperial resources and strategic planning. They could reconnect the neural link temporarily when needed. The protocols were established now, making it easier than the forced initial integration. But they mostly chose to operate separately. Mostly, but not entirely. They stayed physically close, not out of necessity anymore, but out of choice. Not touching, but near enough that the warmth between them was real rather than artificial emergency protocols. They were in the cockpit of Kale's salvage ship. His vessel had been repaired with imperial resources, upgraded from barely functional to genuinely capable, when Shalika asked the question Kale had been expecting. "Why did you agree to this?" "To staying, I mean. You could have separated and left, taken payment for helping and disappeared into the reach where I'd never find you. Kale thought about lying, about claiming it was purely pragmatic. The resources, the purpose, the promise of profits from recovered imperial assets. But they'd seen each other's memories. Lying seemed pointless. Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That maybe there's more to life than just surviving another day. That trying to make things better, even when you'll probably fail, is worth doing anyway. He looked at her. You governed trillions and tried to make their lives better. I salvaged dead ships in the dark. Different scales, same principle. Maybe I wanted to be part of something that mattered again. And does it matter, I mean? I don't know yet. Ask me after we've recovered more of your resources and figured out if rebuilding what you started is even possible. She smiled, genuine and unguarded. Fair enough. They continued toward the coordinates, navigating through the darkness between stars. Behind them, Shalika's enemies still searched, probably always would. Ahead, uncertainty and the slim possibility that reform might be possible if attempted differently this time. Do you ever regret it? Shalika asked. The neural link, the invasion of each other's minds. Kale considered. Yeah, sometimes. When I remember things that aren't mine and can't tell which memories belong to which life. When I feel your loneliness bleeding into my thoughts, even though we're not connected anymore. But most of the time, no. Because now I understand something I didn't before. That power doesn't make you less human. It makes you more alone. And maybe someone who once governed an empire needs at least one person who sees them as someone worth saving, not because of the position but despite it. Shalika was quiet for a long moment. The warmth between us, I think I understand now. It's not biochemistry, or not only biochemistry. What is it then? The choice to stay after separation becomes possible. That's what makes it real. In the viewport, stars wheeled through endless dark, and two people who'd met through desperate circumstance navigated toward uncertain futures, choosing partnership over isolation and connection over the comfortable distance of strangers. Whether it would last beyond necessity, neither knew. Whether the empire Shalika wanted to rebuild could actually be built, remained to be seen. Whether Kale would prove to be more than just a salvager playing at being something better was still undetermined. But for now, in the vast darkness between stars,